Spyro came out on PS4.
Hello everybody and welcome to one of the most inflammatory videos I've ever made. I get it because But I don't want you to misunderstand me for a second. This video's title, it's just a bit of fun. It's an old knee slapper. Speaking as someone who thinks that these three games here are some of the finest 3D platformers ever made, and I'm pretty sure I've put more hours into completing them than the entire original Crash trilogy, Spyro Reignited Trilogy is a fantastic game, and for the price, it's worth its value more than I can describe. And whether you've played Spyro before or never even heard of him, I highly recommend you see what all the fuss was about back in the day and why so many people migrated to the PS1 because of him. I even 100%ed the entire collection in 3 days straight. I enjoyed my time so much. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. There is some shit I did not like in this game, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about it all today in a top 10 video. Before I go into any of that though, I'd like to spend a few minutes telling you what I thought was great in the Reignited Trilogy, because I don't want you to think I'm just a nasty little nipple. Firstly, well, this game, it's bloody Spyro. If you loved the original games, they are mostly left untouched in terms of design, and everything great about them is present even with some of the more modern tweaks. The vast and sprawling level designs begging to be explored, distant secrets teasing you with goodies that you need to try and glide to from secret higher points, extremely fun and varied side objectives, it's all here and has aged much better than I expected it would. This does mean you get all of classic Spyro though, with all of its trappings, which is most noticeable for me in Spyro 1 with the boss levels. I thought they were dreadful in the original PS1 game, and they're still dreadful now. Not only because the levels they occupy are some of the most basic and linear in the entire game with nothing memorable or interesting in them, but the battles themselves are totally pathetic. On Toasty's stage, I died more to these damn dogs than I did the boss itself, which just stands there and lets you burn it. And even the final boss with Nasty Nork doesn't give a toss. All he does is stand there and spit at you, followed by spending the rest of the fight running away from you like a big old bitch. My point is, if you didn't like the original games back in the day, aside from the control differences, Reignited Trilogy won't do much to convince you to fall in love with Spyro this time around. Exactly the same story with Insane Trilogy now that I think about it. But as far as the controls go, holy hell, I never had any problem with the original games, but now this game makes the original seem like you're roller skating through honey in comparison. Spyro is ridiculously tight and extremely fun and bouncy to control, and the charging is my absolute favourite in any 3D Spyro game to date. The weight and heavy momentum with slippy sliding from the original Spyro 1 has mixed in with the speed and responsiveness of 2 and 3 to give you a brilliant compromise that feels completely excellent. Not too fast, not too slow, not too tight in the turning, and not too loose either. And there's a few additional tweaks made across all 3 games in the collection to make them more accessible, but all the better for it in my opinion. Spyro in the first game still doesn't have the ability to hover that gives you an extra bump of height and distance after a long glide, but to compensate, Spyro can now pull himself up with this pseudo grab move if you just miss the platform, which will save your life multiple times. You can also use sparks to point towards any lost gems in all 3 games from the very start, making those moments when you're missing one single gem and cannot find it for the life of you no longer an issue. And if that's not enough, you even have a map feature across all 3 games from the start as well. The analog stick control is extremely precise to make Spyro snap towards any direction you point him towards immediately, and this extends to additional characters in Spyro 3 too. Sheila isn't anywhere near as heavy but still has the perfect amount of weight to her movements. Sergeant Bird is a joy to control with the knowledge we have nowadays on third-person flying control schemes. Bentley moves a little bit faster and jumps a little bit higher, and oh my god, Agent 9 is now a third-person shooter! Yes! Yes! I'm so happy they did this. Even that awful first-person mission in Fireworks Factory plays like an actual first-person shooter and not like if Wolfenstein was made by a baby. Load times when inside levels are non-existent to keep the pace up, and there's even fast travel from the very start of all the games to make backtracking to previous levels with new abilities and characters no hassle whatsoever. This is easily the best controlling Spyro game of all time, bar none, and I have to praise the art style as well. Some of the levels are so beautiful that if they were my best friend, I'd kill all of their lovers so that they could only belong to me. There's way more original assets and character designs on display, even if they're on screen for only a few seconds. Old enemies that gave my younger self nightmares now look even more horrific. Blades of grass don't only singe temporarily when you burn them, but also react to Spyro's feet and tail whenever he brushes past them. And Spyro's animations as well are frigging perfect and almost feline in their look. It reminds me a lot of a Hero's Tail, but nowhere near as stretchy and ridiculous. He even adjusts his feet mid-air whenever he's flying or charging mid-air after a jump, which further adds to his cat-like movements. Honestly though, I'm in 2 minds about Sparks having feet. On one hand, it's kind of adorable, and on the other hand, stop waving at me right now! There isn't only the entire original soundtrack to choose from if you feel truly nostalgic, but even a brand new dynamic soundtrack that not only captures the original tunes perfectly with a more modern twist, but even gives you less accompaniment when you stand still, different instruments when underwater, and adds galloping noises when you charge, just to name a few things. Even Sheila jumps in time with her own theme song. Also, you can do this in the level loading screens. Okay, well I didn't say it was fun. This is though. Enough positivity! I just flicked the bastard caddy switch. Here's 10 things that suck about the Reignited Trilogy. Bentley boxing is still awful and way too difficult. I'm only joking, it's easy as piss, and if you still can't do it nowadays, then you're just shit.
Things that weren't fixed or were made even worse. Sometimes.
I may have had a ton of praise just then for all the control fixes, but for Christ's sake, some of these things weren't fixed at all, or sometimes were even worse than they were originally. It's great how things like sliding actually allow you to, you know, control yourself this time. But what isn't great is these few things here. Ice skating in Spyro 2 is still how it was in the original, with the auto moving forward instead of in Spyro 3 when you have free control and can stop in place. With this boss against the bull in Metropolis, it's a royal pain in the ass crack that could have been very easily fixed by just having the ability to stop and avoid the bombs, but that just isn't the case for some reason. Also, the flight controls, where they're great for the most part when you go through a speed boost, instead of it being like it is in the original when you go really, really fast but still have tight, precise control. Now it's almost like you drift in midair, which I'm sure I don't need to explain is a bit of a problem, and it makes you smack into the side of things and make you not decide to take any of the shortcuts and make the races last way longer because of that. And for the main thing that made me add this questionable changes topic to the list, the fight against the fire dragons in Fireworks Factory. What was already a long, drawn out and frustrating mission has been made at least 3 times worse by a number of changes. Firstly, your super fire breath attack is a little bit smaller than the original game, making hitting these extremely skinny targets while they move and twist around all over the place even more difficult. Secondly, I swear they respawn their health much faster than they did before, making the battle even longer. And thirdly, I also swear they're much more aggressive than they ever were in the original and managed to hit me over and over and over again, unlike anything I've ever seen. The only way I was able to beat these things is if they were somehow stuck in a loop-de-loop while I was close enough to wail on them, but that was rare, and why they decided to make this already hated mission even more tricky I couldn't possibly tell you. Look at these Norks in Twilight Harbor, the last main level of the game in Spyro 1. What should be aggressive and horrible enemies with vicious machine guns are now aggressive and horrible enemies with paintball guns.
What is this, Peppa Pig? Supercharge!
Okay, to be more exact, it's fine for the most part, but if there's one thing I thought was done twice as good in the original games, it was the Supercharge mechanic. What used to give you instant fast speeds now has a very weird speed building system where the longer you charge, the faster you go. And if you dare even touch certain sides of tracks while supercharging, this can sometimes happen. Oh, and I'm not sure if this weird new momentum building Supercharge was to blame or whatever, but one level that is infamous among the Spyro fandom, Treetops, was made even more difficult with the Supercharge jumping. I personally know Treetops inside out and know every single route to each distant island with the super ramp jumping points, so much so that I can do it all on my first time on the PS1 version. But here, sometimes I'd jump too low, sometimes I wouldn't jump far enough, sometimes glides wouldn't make it, going off at the same speed and the same ramps and everything. Yeah, I know if you want to get specific, I'm jumping off of the ramp at different points, but it seemed way more strict in Reignited, and it didn't half make me shout. You know the classic bone dance in Spyro 2 and 3 when you help Ooga put his skeleton friend back together? Well, now there's unironic air horns trying so desperately hard to be cool and hip it's embarrassing. And now the skeleton flosses. It's terrible and I hate it.
Glitches. Or bugs, there's one.
Now you may be thinking to yourself, glitches are a pretty important thing to the experience of a game, so why isn't this higher up the list? Well, that's because A, the bugs I came across weren't that numerous compared to the rest of the game that played fine, and B, I only seemed to have the bad glitches on Spyro 3. Which sucks because that's my favourite of the trilogy, but I'm sorry, did you just see that there? And that wasn't the only thing. I experienced this annoying little bug multiple times where Sparks outright refused to pick up any gems that were right next to him. Sure, when you're standing this close, it's stupid. You can just go and pick the gem up. But when you're on a grassy plain with green gems perfectly camouflaged into the grass that Sparks just completely ignores, that's really annoying and a huge time waster at best. There was this one part here where I caught an egg thief after it decided to have a little bit of a fit, but then when I got to him, it didn't drop the egg and he disappeared from the game entirely, causing me to have to reboot the game to get him back. And the only reason I knew to do that was because I played Spyro 3 so many times, so if I was a first time player of this game, I wouldn't have thought that anything was supposed to happen and I would have been looking around for one single missing egg the entire time. I mean, come on. And another time I had to reset the game was when my mole counter here in the Bentley mole bashing mission was completely stuck on 15 and would not budge. Not that this ever happened to me personally, but I've heard a few reports of crashing and save game data being lost on Twitter. Someone said to me that they had the final 100% 100% completion level of Spyro 1 completely locked out, which after completing the game to 100% to try and unlock it must have felt a bit crap. And even though I found the right stick free camera control a big improvement over the left and right shoulder control from the original trilogy, whenever you go swimming in Spyro 2 and 3, and especially when you charge underwater, the camera would get a bit confused and think it was giving you a Spyro colonoscopy. The worst part for me though was in this part of Sergeant Bird's base. You go into a tunnel and this happens. What in the actual bloody moist figs is going on here? I can't see a single shitting thing here, and no, I'm not in the aiming downwards mode, I'm just trying to get through the tunnel regularly. Oh look, I died, what a surprise. I'm not going to pretend the original games were glitch free, but the originals definitely felt more stable, and that was on the PS1, so I have to give a point to them.
The Alchemist.
They should have scrapped this mission, I just hate it. This isn't the Reignited Trilogy's fault, I know, but my god, when you have a mission in the game that is entirely based on trial and error as you escort a dumbass scientist to Hunter trapped by rocks on his feet, who even thinks it's a great idea to walk around in circles towards pickaxe-wielding rock monsters that he already avoided, when the place he needs to go to is right next door to where he already is, it just makes you question your life choices every time you restart the mission. I'm lucky in the sense that I've done this so many times, I know exactly where he's going, and I did it my first time, but even then, you can only just interrupt the rock monsters before they attack. And plus, that's all you can really do, because your charge pushes them back so slightly, you can never truly get them out of the way, meaning that all you can do is hit them at just the right time so that they're stunned as the Alchemist walks past them. And even better, if you didn't know beforehand, after you finish that mission, you find out from Hunter that you need another power-up to do another mission that follows it. So you carry on with the game, get the head bash move, return to Fracture Hills to do the second part of the mission, and you have to do the Alchemist part all over again! And while I'm in the middle of bitching about particular missions, I'm gonna go off for a bit on this one. And I know what you're expecting me to say, you know, that one mission in the entire trilogy when every time you fail it, you hear the same line over and over again.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
But no. I'm not talking about that one. Because aside from the first time I deliberately failed the mission just so I could record that line, I did this mission on my first try. It's really not that bad. I don't know why people have such an issue with it. No. There is only one mission in the entire trilogy where I have to hear one particular line over and over and over again.
Ow! I went boom again. Ow! I went boom again.
What happens when you take the trial and error element of the Alchemist mission but with a faster NPC to escort while they erratically bounce along a winding path with no indication on what they're about to crash into until the last minute?
You get this goddamn exciting mission!
And by the way, those mushrooms you need to stomp, not only do you have to stomp them preemptively because of the delay in your jump and stomp move, but they also don't stay down for very long before popping back up, which is great when these idiotic insects decide to loop around and run past the exact same obstacle you already pushed down, but it just went back up again. Damn you all to hell.
Ow!
Again, like the last point, I know this isn't the Reignited Trilogy's fault majorly, but I think at least they could have made the Fireflies move just a little bit slower, or made this task more, you know, what's the word? Oh yeah, fun. And it makes even less sense than the Alchemist holding the secret formula, because at least Sheila has hands. She can hold the bombs herself and take them straight there herself. She bounces around less than them too, so she's probably safer anyway. Wait a second, why don't they just light the fuses when they get to the cages instead of lighting them at the start of a dangerous road? You don't get your keys out when walking down Drain Street, you get them out of your pocket at the front door.
Voice acting.
Okay, back on track with the Reignited specifics here. The voice acting as a whole in the PS4 remakes across all three games I found to be okay. The entirety of Spyro 1 is great, but that's because anything is better than the original Spyro 1.
Spyro, it's great to see you, but I've got to go.
What? And I must be clear, a lot of these voices in the stages and interpretations of returning characters I actually adored. The Professor sounds great, Elora sounds adorable, Moneybags is as sleazy as ever, Spark still can't talk properly and it's brilliant. Bianca is more expressive, Sergeant Bird is way less one-note and has more character in his inflictions, Sheila sounds great, Zoe is at least 7 times less annoying, but for most of the other voices, I'm sorry, I think they were better in the original game. They seem to do the Ratchet & Clank PS4 way of interpreting a classic, sacrificing the core ridiculousness and humour for cliched and forgettable cartoon show voices. Don't know what I mean? Here's a handful of examples that I wasn't too sure about in the remake.
I'm a secret agent.
I'm a secret agent.
As you can see, a vicious ox has taken over our armory.
As you can see, a vicious ox has taken over our armory.
Gosh darn it, Spyro. I came in here to check on my prisoner.
Gosh darn it, Spyro! I came in here to check on my prisoner.
Wherefore art thou, Romeo? Oh, there's Romeo.
Wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Oh, there's Romeo.
You'll have to use this combo power-up to take out these fire dragons.
You'll have to use this combo power-up to take out these fire dragons.
Rhinox are running rampant around here, but I can't get anyone out of the Tiki Lodge long enough to do anything about it.
Rhinox are running rampant around here, but I can't get anyone out of the Tiki Lodge long enough to do anything about it.
If you ask me, the statue is far prettier than she is.
If you ask me, the statue is much prettier than she is.
Not only that, but even Ripto, most people's favourite bad guy in Spyro history, has gone from a pathetic and slightly campy, frustrated menace who thinks he's bigger than he really is,
You singed my cape, dragon.
to an angry and annoyed man.
You singed my cape, dragon.
I can't describe it any better than that. He's just an angry person to me and nothing more. And sometimes these voices can clash against their designs, most of which, again, I totally love. But when you have these hilariously restrictive 32-bit 3D characters translated into highly detailed cartoon characters, I don't know, sometimes they just seem to lose all their charm to me. Even Hunter, I love this dude and his design I found great, and the voice performance is good, don't get me wrong, but compared to the original with the slightly clueless, cowardly and sarcastic edge to his dialogue,
I found this gladiator training arena, and it makes a pretty cool skate park. Care for a test of your boarding skills?
has now been made overly confident and very Sonic the Hedgehog-y to me.
I found this gladiator training arena that also makes for a pretty cool skate park. Care for a test of your boarding skills?
Well, the good thing, I suppose, is that Spyro no longer sounds like a bratty, insufferable douchebag.
What about Nasty Nork? I'm going after him.
What about Nasty Nork? I'm going after him.
So thank you very much for that, SpongeBob SquareBob Super Bob. When I got this trophy, I thought it said Jaculate, and I was nearly sick.
Performance.
Is this game Sonic Boom levels of stuttery? Not at all, but this game does not run that great, and after I mentioned this on Twitter and a few people said it ran brilliantly for them, well, my footage doesn't lie here. I'm not trying to be a knob, this is what the game is like. If you're watching this on a mobile device or at 60 FPS, it may not look as bad, but if you go to full screen on your computer or watch on a TV, you'll see what I mean. This is direct capture from a PS4 Pro, and for as good as the game looks at a standstill, in motion, it likes to jump about a bit a few times. Not all the time, but enough for me to notice it and distract me a bit. It is kind of frequent. And this doesn't ruin the game from start to end for me, don't get me wrong, it still plays fine a fair amount of the time, as you can see from the footage, but whenever you charge into multiple pots at once, flame particular enemies, glide to particular areas as they load up ready for your arrival, or turn the camera quickly around in crowded areas, the game can sometimes look like a tractor wading through cowpat. And just before anybody else brings this up, yes, my favourite game of all time is Bloodborne on PS4, and that game does not run that well either. But firstly, the time gap between this game and Spyro is nearly 4 years, and secondly, look at the visual fidelity of Bloodborne compared to Spyro. I'm not saying Spyro's ugly in comparison, but there's a lot more going on in Bloodborne, and it really sucked me into the world despite the frame drops, whereas Spyro, I don't know, I'm not sure why it doesn't run smoother. And let's not forget the complaints from PS4 owners, particularly about the motion blur. This wasn't something that bothered me personally, but I know other people that have experienced sickness from the speed of the game compared to something like Uncharted 4's motion blur. And I don't think any level of distant details being rendered on screen is impressive enough for the game to run choppily as a result. I'd much rather it ran at a forever stable 30 with motion blur like the original release of the Insane Trilogy and Ratchet & Clank remake, or sacrifice a little more of the visuals for a potentially strong 60 FPS. There's a weird attempt here to get the best possible visuals but disguise the resulting occasional choppiness with excessive blur instead of just sticking with a stable 30 or doing a little less for a few more frames. Spyro is a fast-paced platformer, and if the original games run smoother on older hardware and relied on rendering tricks to give the illusion of objects far away to help it out, I'd rather have something done similar to that in order for the full potential of a next-gen version of the same games I love to be a lot more than just a paint job the game can't handle. It's annoying because in terms of control and everything else, this is easily the better alternative version of the same classic Spyro games, and it does look great, but honestly, I'd rather just go back to the original games if I ever wanted to replay them because of how distracting this was to me. And to say that makes me really sad because I did love this game, but I can't ignore this. So yeah, I don't want you to think I'm a frame rate snob, because I'm seriously not. If your game looks absolutely fantastic, absolutely stunning, and runs at a solid, consistent 30 FPS, I'm completely okay with it. And if it runs at 60, that's even better. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed my little rant today, along with a very brief and very positive review at the start of this video about Spyro Reignited Trilogy. And remember everybody, if you're upset with my opinions, chill out. I still think that this game is really, really damn good, and I highly recommend recommend you go and get it. I suppose all I can do now is wait for the eventual PC release, Toys for Bob, so that it can join alongside your second best release, Madagascar. Yes, I'm not joking, they made this. Hey everybody, here to see the outtakes. They'll be on in just a second. But first of all, I'd love to say, well, first of all, hello. Thank you for watching this video to the very end, because if you're watching this message, that means you've watched from the beginning to the end, obviously. But that really does mean more to me than I can even describe. That means I'm doing something right. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing so. And also special thank you to all the names on screen right now who are supporting this channel via Patreon, and without you guys, wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff without you, so thank you very much. And also, yeah, the video amount has dropped a little bit recently, but I'm gonna have an update video in a bit explaining why, and also in the update video, gonna explain why this particular month has been a little bit, not scarce in terms of video content. There's been a few videos going out, but I mean, I'll just say 4 words. Daily videos in December. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that, wait until the update video, until there's another explanation on more about that. But yeah, that's why I've been so busy recently, and that's why I'm staying up until about 5:30 AM doing all of this stuff. But anyway, just before we close this video off and watch the outtakes, I'd like to thank the top tier Patreon supporters. Omama 2, Basil, I Have a Portal Gun, Oblivion Rising, Exopaz, Matthew Hubble, Mills Kahai, Brandon, Binary Code, Kirsten B, QB, Cyberpunk Symphony, Nicole Ganara, Nathan Young, Victor Patrick Bauer, Robert Alamsha, The Game Shed, a YouTube channel, Daniel Leon, DC Dungeon Master, Braden Kenny, Jake Delahaye 2008, Mitchell Reed, and A.D. Thornton Smith. Thank you so much, every single one of those people. And while I'm in the middle of bitching about particular missions, I'm gonna bitch about this one. And then I'm gonna look at the script because I forgot what I was gonna say. Here's 10 things that suck about the That wasn't supposed to happen. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed my little rant today, along with a very brief and very positive review at the start of this video about Spyro Reignited Trilogy, and So thank you very much for that, Sponge Pants, I was gonna say. Sponge Pants Square Bob. And while I'm in the middle of bitching about particular missions, I'm gonna go off for a bit on this one. And I was so close. I had it.
That's what she said. Oh! There he is.
There he is. Right on cue. People tend to like accuse me of putting the dog in deliberately, or like putting his sound bites on top of these takes sometimes, just to make up the outtake.
Hang on.
We've shut him out and he's still going off on one. He just doesn't stop.
Just to prove everybody. There he is.
Oh my god.